What's the darn deal?
Haven't we had this conversation before?
What? Where's my divider? Got any postage? Give me some postage there, young lady. Lay it on me, lay it on me. Lay it on me.
2, 6, 1.
5454. 5454. Who are you calling?
What's the number? Not for 503. It should be 9.
I must have been dialed wrong because somebody else
Must have.
answered and I. Mark? Hi, it's Gina. Good, how are you doing? Did you want to participate?
Tell him just because he's a first citizen doesn't mean he can do whatever he wants.
All ready to go?
Commissioner Edelin, are you there?
I am. Thank you.
I'm here.
I see that.
Call to order the May 13th, 2015 meeting of the Board of Commissioners of the Portland Development Commission. Gina, would you call the roll?
Chair Kelly,
Here.
Commissioner Dixon,
Here.
Commissioner Edelin,
Here by phone.
Commissioner Molis, absent, Commissioner Wilhoit.
Here.
Commissioner reports. Aneska, would you like to start?
I have nothing to report again this month. I have just continued staying busy at work and not able to attend anything, but I was really happy about the grand opening of the Mercado project, and I know members from my company were able to attend, and it said it was a well-attended event, and that was such a exciting project that I was really glad that we supported, so I was sad to have missed that.
Sir.
I worked a lot last month as well. I had the privilege of having dinner at the same table as Janet Yellen in the middle of April, so that was pretty exciting. We got to talk about the economy, but of course I have nothing to disclose. So that was fun. But no, I would share in Commissioner Dixon's comments about the Mercado. Anything we're moving forward now is positive for the city and positive for the state. And I say that because we're always deliberate about what we're doing. So nice to see things come to fruition and completion. And I would just once again always thank the staff for their hard work and Patrick for his leadership in moving projects forward and taking care of the organization, thereby taking care of the city of Portland. So that's my report.
Commissioner Edelin.
I attended the Oregon Against Discrimination lunch, the Work Connections breakfast, joined in on the merit briefing, attended 2 North Steelers House school meetings, and I met with UDT and Beam, local developers, trying to encourage them to get more involved with public-private partnerships and PDC.
Thank you. So I normally go through my schedule and check to see what I've done, but I didn't do that, but I can do quite a few of these off the top of my head. 2 different times before the City Council, one about the strategic plan and one time this morning about the budget. Visited the Society Hotel the other day, which was pretty interesting to see. And I was at the Mercado dedication for a little bit too, which is, if there's a project that just kind of warms your soul, that's the one. It's pretty neat to see that off the ground and going. Patrick.
Thank you very much, Chair Kelly, and good afternoon, Commissioners. And there's been a lot happening this month, so I'll try and keep it brief, but a lot to report on. First, just want to recognize some of the awards that our commissioners have received since we last met. So on the 15th of April, the Port of Portland had their annual luncheon, and they gave their Compass Award, which is their big award for this event, to Commissioner Mullis, who's not here with us, but I know there was a lot of people in the room who were very happy to see John receive that award, and felt it was very deserving of all the work that he does, excuse me, to promote job creation and growth in our economy. So congratulations to Commissioner Mullis on that. And then I think a week or two ago, the Portland Metropolitan Realtors Association had their annual event in which they awarded their 2015 Portland First Citizen Award to Commissioner Edlin and his wife, Ann. And that was, I think, I was out of town in D.C. for that, during that event, but I was told that was a really special event as well. So congratulations to Commissioner.
I forgot to say I was at that one, just so Mark knows that I was there too.
Thank you.
So congratulations, Commissioner Edlin.
Thank you. Riding in my wife's wave.
Yes, that's right. So yes, we've, Chair Kelly and I have done our work in front of City Council of the past few weeks. You'll hear about our strategic plan in a minute, but we presented the strategic plan to City Council last Wednesday, and it was, they don't formally act on it, but they endorse, their job is to endorse it, and it was very warmly received, and there was a lot of kudos for PDC. So that was a nice event, and I'll be doing the presentation because Kimberly Branham is out. I'll be doing the presentation in a few minutes on the strategic plan and get into that in more detail. And then, as Chair Kelly mentioned, we did present our budget, our 15-16 budget to City Council this morning. City Council sits as our budget committee, so it was the formal meeting of our PDC Budget Committee. They receive the budget and first, and then 2 weeks later they vote on it. So there'll be a public hearing next week on the 20th, and then on the 27th they'll meet again to vote on it. Got some questions to follow up on, and so we'll get back to City Council, and I encourage people to attend our budget hearing on the 20th. It's on our website, but I believe it's at 6 or 6:30 at City Council chambers. So, and you know, when the budget gets adopted, we'll do this again. But I particularly want to highlight the great work that Tony Barnes does as our budget officer to get the budget where it is. Obviously, Faye Brown, our CFO, and the rest of the finance team does a lot of great work on that. But today we were called out because we delivered our budget with about 48 hours notice, and we were asked to do it earlier, and we're happy to make our process as efficient as possible. But the city didn't finish its budget until last week, or the mayor didn't propose his budget till last week, so we really couldn't finish ours until we had that. So I just want to recognize Tony's work, and it's not Tony that keeps the budget from being delivered on time. So as I mentioned, lots happened in the past month. I'm going to run down a few things that have happened on our end. As we discussed in the process of getting the urban renewal amendments through council, we were going to move forward on an affordable housing project on what we call Parcel 3 in River Place in our North McAdam urban renewal area. So that RFP is actually out. We're doing it in conjunction with the Portland Housing Bureau. The criteria there are a minimum of 200 new affordable housing units, and we expect it to be a larger project than that, but responses to that RFP are due by the end of May 29th, and it's posted both on our website, pdc.us, and you can also go to the Portland Housing Bureau's website, which is on the city's website at portlandoregon.gov. And so we hope to get a lot of great responses to that. We launched at the end of last month on the 28th, we launched with local partners, mainly MISO, our first micro revolving loan fund pilot. So we've set aside some money for our partners to lend out in as micro loans, which are, as you know, are very small, couple $1,000 loans for entrepreneurs, self-employed individuals So that's the first time we've done that. You can go to our website as well for more information, pdc.us. And then yesterday, we hosted here in this room a seminar on doing business in China. One of our partners in our work in China was here and was willing to host an event and talk about his experiences working in China. And we worked with a number of our partners in our export and trade and investment work, including Greater Portland Inc., to put this on. And we had more than 100 people in attendance. Michael Gerton on our staff did most of the legwork on that. And I think for us, it was just very encouraging to see the number of people here who really want to learn more about how they can do business in China. Our partners, as you mentioned with the Portland Mercado, our partners have been hard at work over the past month. I'm going to run down a number of really great things that are happening. Obviously, the Mercado, had a great fortune of attending their grand opening. The Urban League had its career fair in April. PDC has always been a sponsor and a participant in that. The Urban League also announced their new CEO, who I've had the good fortune of knowing for a few years now, and then got to meet with her again just the other day. Her name is Nkenge Harmon Johnson, and so she officially took over. Monday was her first day. Friday, got to go to a goodbye celebration for Michael Alexander. As Charles knows, just a fantastic guy, was the right person at the right time to lead the Urban League, and so we're going to miss Michael, but he seems like he's ready to move on and take it easy for a while, so he's definitely earned it. Last Friday, I lose track of days here, I think it was last Thursday or Friday, our friends in the J District, Apano, and then the J District MPI folks, they opened up their new community center with an event, and they are operating out of a building owned by Metro. Metro bought an old furniture store at the corner of 82nd and Division, and they're planning on a development there in a few years, but in the meantime, it's an empty facility, and so they're allowing Apano to use it as a temporary community center, and so they kicked off that center with a nice party there on Thursday night. A number of people from PDC were there. I know Jina was there, said it was a great event. Very crowded. It's always a good event to be at. I had the chance to tour it earlier in the day, and it's just really great, not only that building, but also what's going on on 82nd. Want to congratulate our partners in Cully. So it includes Hacienda and the Cully Association of Neighbors, as well as our partners at Portland Parks and Rec on the opening of the first neighborhood park in Cully. It's hard to believe, but we all know Cully's one of the neighborhoods that is seriously lacking in park space. But they opened a brand new park pronounced Kana Moxt Park. There's a great article in the Oregonian about it, but it's a great neighborhood park, and there's more. I think there's more park space on the way. There's the Cully neighborhood park that's still under development, and then the Colwood Golf Course space is also being converted into open space as well. We, of course, in the interim, we had Cinco de Mayo. Cinco de Mayo is the main annual event of our Portland Guadalajara Sister City Association, and PDC has been a long-time sponsor of that event. John Jackley and John Cardenas have particularly played a big role in that event. John got to present at the naturalization ceremony that happens every year there, but it's another great event. And then our partners at PSU, the PSU Business Accelerator won the award for the Incubator of the Year at the National Business Incubation Association Conference in April. So quite an award for one of our local incubators here. And Angela Jackson, who runs that, is a partner of ours on a number of things, including the Portland Seed Fund. I just want to quickly run through all the company announcements that have happened over the past month because it just shows you the momentum of the economy here. Under Armour announced they were expanding their presence here and buying a building, the old YMCA on 4th in Southwest Portland. Was approved, which moved in here from Hillsborough. They've taken over space in the Pearl. They had their open house in April. Aruba Networks had their open house to show off their new space. They expanded here from California. Mizuno USA, which is another footwear company, they announced their plans to expand their Portland operations here. Wild Fang is another apparel company. They specialize in what they call kind of tomboy apparel, so apparel for women. They had a profile in Fast Company magazine about how they've promoted their brand. And then a company called WeWork, which is a national co-working space. They announced they were taking over space in the Customs House just down the street here, and the Customs House has been long vacant, so that's also nice to hear. During April, speaking of all these athletic and outdoor companies, during April, we hosted another group in Japan. So we took a group of companies to Japan, and what we do there is we arrange a series of events that are mini trade shows and other forums for them to meet contacts in Japan and showcase their products. That work, of course, here is led by Mitsu Yamazaki, who does most of our work in Japan, both with the A&O companies, but also We Build Green Cities. And then Sue Ball, who's on our staff, she represents the athletic and outdoor industry, and she was also a part of that. A few upcoming initiatives, or events, excuse me. Friday, get to ride on the Orange Line. Are you joining me on that? We're going to so that's cool. Friday morning, we're going to hop on the train for the first time and take a ride across the bridge. The Orange Line, I think, is still slated to open in September of this year. Maybe they'll do it a little early, but they're already testing the trains going back and forth across the bridge. I just saw something, the streetcar is going to do a test ride as well, I think, in June. Oregon Storyboard, which is our partner on the digital media side, the accelerator partner, they have an open application right now for their next class. Those applications are due the 17th of this month. So I think that's, what is that, Monday? And then lastly, our annual Celebrate Trade event is next Monday night. We do that in partnership with a lot of different organizations, including Business Oregon, Greater Portland, Inc., but also the Oregon Consular Corps, the association of all the honorary and consul generals here in Portland. And so a number of companies in Portland will be honored for their work in promoting trade and investment. And then lastly, a few internal announcements. We brought back for the first time in a few years, Bring Your Kid to Work Day, which is, I think everybody celebrated in April 22nd. What was that, April? Something like that. And so we had the great idea to say that if you're willing, if your kids want to come to work, that's great. But if you're like me and my kids wanted nothing to do with to see me at work, you could adopt a kid. So we convinced the Waddles Boys and Girls Clubs to let us have their kids for the day. And so we had a great group from the Boys and Girls Club who joined us. So it was a great combination of kids from the Boys and Girls Club and sons and daughters of our staff here. And we had a whole day of them listening to boring talks by us about what we do. But then we took them on tours of Old Town, which they found really cool. Got to play ping pong next door and other things. So Selena, who you'll meet in a second, was very much responsible for that, did a great job in organizing that. But Jeff Fish, our director of HR, as well as Kevin Cronin, did that. And so lastly, I want to introduce you to Selena Colson, who has been appointed to our HR department as an HR generalist. Selena had been working for us for a while in a temporary position, and we were planning to post the position, and we actually did post it, but Selena we already had the best candidate in-house, so she's now been formally hired as our HR generalist. Selena is from California. She moved to Portland less than a year ago. Before that, she was in Shasta County and working HR for Shasta County and their Health and Human Services division, and then before that, Selena spent time working as a legal assistant. So welcome officially to PDC, and thanks for your great work already. Thanks.
Thank you. Welcome, Selena. So our next order of business is the approval of the minutes of the meeting of April 8th, 2015.
So moved.
Yeah. I was here for most of the meeting, but I was on the phone, but I read them. I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 We have one individual who would like to comment during the public comment period of our agenda. This is Carolyn Anderson. Carolyn, would you come on up? Welcome.
I just wanted to say that I'm thankful for all the opportunities that that the PDC is, are offering to the community through MISO and the different programs. I think they're awesome. As a matter of fact, I'm participating in hoping to participate in a couple of the events that Mr. Quinton listed when he spoke. Yet at the same time, I feel very disturbed in part on the behalf of the African American community when I read the reports that have been the reports from the Portland Housing Bureau and the fact that the gentrification is taking place the way it is, and people, and I feel like sometimes that the Portland Development Commission has not been straightforward, or the Portland Housing Bureau has not been straightforward in the way they have presented their information to the public, and the public is not always aware of what is happening that affects the lives of the public. And me, in particular, having been gentrified and having had to move from place to place like almost every 2 years, while being aware that this process was taking place when I first moved here early on in 2001, and I was powerless to do anything about it. I'm hoping that by my giving public comment right now, that the PDC and the Portland Housing Bureau would be more transparent in the way they do business and in the way they affect the African American and the lives of people of color, especially with low income, because we can contribute to this city, but who can contribute to a city when you're fearful of the thing that you're in need of most, and that is housing. You know, I'm hoping that my public comment today will bring about some discussion on how the many ways that the policies that are in place now and the procedures that are in place now are not really conducive to people having a home. Was that my 3 minutes?
That little ding was your 3 minutes.
Oh,
but
I'm sorry.
If you want to go
I'm
on
very
just a
shy
little bit
about-
more, that's okay.
Yeah, I'm very shy about speaking this way. So I'm just hoping that my public comment today will really get you to thinking about and really making some changes in the way you do business, by being more transparent, by having people, you know, it's empty practically, having people, inviting people and making these meetings open more to the public. Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Okay. On to our regular agenda. The first action item is the adoption of the Portland Development Commission 2015-2020 Strategic Plan. And my agenda says that Mr. Quinton is going to make that presentation.
Yes, I am. As I mentioned, I am filling in for Kimberly Branham, who really led this process throughout, and if she were here, not on maternity leave, she would be presenting right now. So I guess I can start by thanking Kimberly for all her great work and leadership on this. Justin Douglas, who's sitting there, was also played a significant role in coordinating this. We have a brief presentation on it. We have talked about this plan a number of times already, so the presentation doesn't really dive into the specifics. When we get to the slide that talks about the meat of the plan, I'm going to pause and maybe highlight some of the things that are in the document itself. So, as you know from your service on the board, the strategic plan plays a crucial role in the operations of the agency, and this plan, because it does have a fairly well-developed strategic context to it, it both operates as an external document communicating to all of our stakeholders, here are our priorities, here's what we're trying to achieve, but it also serves as the guiding document for our work. We 5-year strategic plan, every year we go back to it and we start our work planning process and our budget process by going back to the strategic plan. You know from our retreats every year that what we bring to you is a draft of a work plan for that year that should align with the strategic plan, and then you develop the budget around that draft work plan. Based on your guidance, we then take the agency work plan, we develop our individual work plans, we fill out the budget, and then we obviously have our metrics and outcomes that we measure. So the strategic plan is not only designed to be the guiding document for our work, but I think we have a track record of doing that, and certainly Commissioner Wilhoit, with all his time on the board, can attest to how often we truly do refer back to our strategic plan and use it in thinking through our priorities of our work. And you also know that when times change, we go back and we update the document. So the document as well will be a living document, and I would expect that at some point over the next 5 years, we will revisit this document and make changes as conditions warrant. As you know, we've gone through a fairly extensive process to update this plan. Because it does serve as both an external strategic document as well as an internal document. We wanted to make sure that we had a group of stakeholders contributing to the development of the document, as well as a robust public process. So we've taken the time to do that. The first third of the process really was discussions within an advisory committee that the mayor convened. Chair Kelly served on the advisory committee, but the advisory committee was a diverse group of stakeholders who really were there representing themselves and their perspectives, not their organizations. And I think the result of that was a very honest conversation about the priorities for our work and about the challenges and opportunities that face the city. That work was augmented by the third-party consultant work that was done that had evaluated the work that we had done over the past 5 years, gave us recommendations for the future. You have the copy of that document in your binder by Market Street, and that document is public. And then from that, we developed a framework document for the plan. Once again, presented that to the board, to City Council, got feedback, turned that into a 40% draft, shared that once again with stakeholders, updated that once again to a 50% draft, and then we went to the public and had about 2 months of public outreach that included both an online forum that anybody could participate in and add to the conversation, but a series of open houses, and then meetings with just about any stakeholder group that was interested in the plan. All that input has now been incorporated into the document you have before you. And as I mentioned, Jackley and I went to the city council last week and presented this document to them, and they essentially endorsed the document, and so now it's here for you. So long way of saying that we have followed a very in-depth process to get here to get where we are today. And from an internal perspective, I also feel like there's been a significant amount of participation by staff in the development of this plan, and I can tell you staff is already thinking about the implementation part of this work. So they're jumping ahead and chomping at the bit to move forward. So this is the single slide representation of the plan. This is where I'm going to pause for a second, just talk through the 5 objectives. I think you know the plan starts from an assessment of where we're at today, both as an organization, but more importantly as a city, as opposed to where we were 5 years ago. We are now in a pretty robust recovery within the city, significant job creation, significant firm growth. So some of the macro level indicators that we looked at 5 years ago have changed significantly. We were digging out of a recession 5 years ago. So a lot has changed, and in many respects that's a positive, and we have a lot of opportunities as well, from the night cancer challenge to the opening of light rail. We have more robust community partners to work with, so a lot of opportunities. But the fundamental driver of this plan is that those opportunities aren't being shared equally in this city. We really do have a tale of two cities, a tale of two economies. So if you don't live downtown, or if you're not white, it's likely that your outcomes are very different in this city than what you're seeing on the macro level. And we believe it is our role as a public agency, but more than that, as the city's economic development and redevelopment agency, that our job is to specifically intervene and to change those outcomes. And so the plan is very focused on that, and I think it's as focused as any plan that we've ever had on addressing issues of inequality and inequity. And so the goal of the plan, right there in the center of the graphic, is promote widely shared prosperity, prosperity among all Portlanders, and we have a way of measuring that. You see that in the plan. It's a self-sufficiency measure that is used by the Portland Plan and others. That's a pretty audacious goal, but once again, it's something that we feel is where we should be pointing our work, and we should be aiming to make progress on that. And if we get there, that's great. But even if we don't, our work is still in service to that goal. And then so around that, we then have these 5 objectives that we believe in concert will move us in that direction. And so they are, first and foremost, trying to create healthy, complete neighborhoods, trying to create access for everyone to high-quality employment, creating equitable access to wealth creation opportunities for communities of color and for low-income communities, to promote the creation of civic networks and partnerships designed to address the broader set of issues that impact prosperity, issues like we just brought up, affordable housing, infrastructure, education, issues like that. And then the last one is the objective of creating an equitable, innovative, and financially stable, sustainable PDC. Once again, I won't get into a lot of detail on these, but within the first objective, you have the bulk of our redevelopment work, the work that we do on the ground in various neighborhoods, and it takes the neighborhood concept from just being outside of Central City to applying to any neighborhood within the city of Portland, whether it be Old Town or Lentz or South Waterfront or Interstate, and says every place that we work, every geographic place is a neighborhood, and it has unique needs, and we need to design custom strategies to meet those needs, and that for people in the city to have access to opportunities, to prosperity, they need to be able to start with healthy, complete neighborhoods that have housing, that have access to transportation, that are safe, all those good things. So that's the foundation of the plan. The next piece is, like I mentioned, access to high-quality employment. This really takes the traded sector work that was such a focus of our last plan and really turns it to working more directly with companies that create jobs, middle-income jobs, that are slowly leaving our economy, and trying to promote the growth of those jobs and ensuring access to those jobs by people in Portland who may not otherwise have access to employment. And so that requires us to be more focused, but also requires us to get more involved in the workforce development piece of it. And we're going to hear testimony from WSI in a second. They're going to talk about how we are going to begin to think again about our partnership and how we work together to make sure that the pathways exist to the jobs that we're helping to create. Third one, equitable wealth creation, is around, once again, taking the work that we've done around entrepreneurship, around small business development, acknowledging that there has been success and saying, okay, how do we direct it so that it impacts the folks who now currently are left out of those opportunities? So an entrepreneurship strategy that really focuses on entrepreneurs of color and women entrepreneurs, and small business strategy that really focuses on locally owned businesses, businesses in our priority neighborhoods, businesses owned by entrepreneurs of color, and helping make them successful as a path to wealth creation. But it also highlights the importance of property ownership as a path to wealth creation, and how disparities in wealth oftentimes are the direct result of the lack of access to property ownership. And so the plan has actions around commercial property ownership and does highlight the need for us and our partners to be more active in promoting home ownership within low-income neighborhoods. On the fourth objective, which is this promotion of civic networks and partnerships, it's designed to take what people believe is one of PDC's fundamental roles, which as a convener, a partner, a broker, bringing together organizations, public and private organizations, and playing a role in addressing some of these larger issues that go beyond our charter. So whether it is affordable housing or education in the workforce or infrastructure, that we see if we can play a larger role in those, not to do what other organizations do, but to help scale efforts that are successful, or maybe restart efforts that may not be as effective. So that's the main gist of that. That's a very experimental part of the plan for us, and so a lot of this is going to be figuring out new ways of us operating with our partners. And then the last piece is, the way I like to say it, is if we are trying to promote a more equitable, a more innovative, a more prosperous Portland, then we as an agency need to be seeking to be more equitable, more innovative, and more financially sustainable. And so the actions within here are designed to promote employee development regardless of who you are, promote financial sustainability. We're kicking off that process as well to become better at what we do, so we're always seeking improvements, and so there's a whole set of actions around that piece. So I have just hurried through the plan. You've seen it, so it's not new to you. Maybe some folks are hearing it for the first time, but we're very excited about it from a staff perspective. Our partners are very excited about it because they do see that PDC is really focused on what is generally believed to be the greatest challenges in the city right now. So we have a lot of excited partners who are ready for us to get to it. I know that we've received a lot of positive feedback from you to date on this. And so the next step here really is to formally adopt it and to move forward with implementation. And like I said, I know that our staff are ready to begin this work, and our commitment is to make this document a reality, and it will never sit on a shelf. It'll always be our guiding document. So with that, I'm happy to answer any last questions, but I know we do have folks here who are going to testify for on behalf of the plan, folks who represented the advisory committee as well.
That Moldus guy wins an award and he thinks he can come in anytime he wants, huh?
Yeah, it's pretty important.
Congrats.
So let's take some testimony. Tricia Ryan from Work Systems. Welcome, Tricia.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Tricia Ryan, and I am the Chief Operating Officer of Work Systems, and we are the Workforce Development
Board for the City of Portland, Multnomah, and Washington counties. And I am here today in support of the Portland Development Commission's strategic plan. As a member of the advisory committee, I saw firsthand the amount of effort that went into producing this plan. Multiple viewpoints came together to discuss the city's most pressing issues, and what emerged was a shared vision for what we hope to achieve together. The plan acknowledges that the objectives and actions are beyond the capacity or purview of any single agency or player in the city. It will require a network of partners, each leading in their own area of expertise, working towards shared outcomes. PDC understands the importance of workforce development to their efforts to create jobs, and skills are a foundational element to ensure that residents have a path to prosperity. As such, you will see workforce development featured prominently in the strategic plan and work systems listed as a critical partner. We invest millions every year providing Portland area residents with the skills and training necessary to obtain a living wage job or advance in their career. We do this primarily through the WorkSource system, the WorkSource centers. We place significant emphasis on serving low-income populations and those with barriers to employment to help ensure that all Portlanders are prepared for and have access to career ladder jobs. A great example of this is our co-investment partnership with PDC on the Economic Opportunity Program. We also are very encouraged by the fact that PDC uses their first source agreements to encourage companies who are receiving public assistance to utilize those trained through the public workforce systems to connect them to those jobs. Access to skilled labor is also vitally important to area businesses as they compete and grow in an ever-changing global marketplace. Much of our training resources are targeted to middle-skill occupations within key sectors of our economy, such as advanced manufacturing and tech. Our investments complement PDC's target industry strategies and job creation agenda. So I'm here to say that Work Systems will continue to do our part to support this strategy. In closing, I would also like to acknowledge both Patrick Quinton and Kimberly Branham for their highly collaborative partnership. They are just phenomenal to work with. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So next we have Thomas Kilbane. Thomas? Welcome.
Good afternoon. My name is Tom Kilbane. I manage the local office for Urban Renaissance Group, which is a commercial real estate firm. I'm a Portland resident. I also am the past chair of the Overlook Neighborhood Association and served on the Interstate Corridor Urban Renewal Citizens Advisory Committee. I served on the PDC Strategic Planning Steering Committee, and I'm here to speak on behalf of the plan being presented today. The new 5-year strategic plan is a bold document. PDC is setting the bar very high to achieve widely shared prosperity for all Portland residents. That's an ambitious goal. I commend the PDC staff and leadership for taking on this worthy challenge. The importance of this effort was highlighted by the recent report by Eco Northwest prepared for the Portland Business Alliance, showing the dwindling number of middle-wage jobs in the city. The plan will require the active support and participation of many other city agencies and bureaus that PDC does not control. As the plan states, the objectives and actions laid out in this plan are beyond the capacity or purview of any single agency or player in the city. To successfully execute against this plan will require both strong leadership and cooperation to secure the critical support of these other agencies. Part of the challenge will be to know when it's time for the leadership and when it's time for the cooperation. One specific comment, a majority of PDC's financial resource, the tax increment financing, is tied to placemaking and brick and mortar type projects. These projects fall within objective number 1, creating healthy, complete communities. It would be good to see work plans developed that lay out more specific objectives for the key catalyst projects identified here. The post office site, Zidell Yards, the Rose Quarter, to name a few. These projects have a big impact and PDC is positioned to make things happen. This would be a good place to be bold. Coming back to the theme of the plan, widely shared prosperity, brings to mind a quote by Franklin Roosevelt. The test of our progress is not whether we add more to the abundance of those who have much. It's whether we provide enough for those who have little. I wish Patrick and his team success. Portland will be a better place to live for all of us when they accomplish the goals that they've set out for themselves with this plan. Thank you.
Tom, thank you, and thank you for your engagement and participation. So, commissioners, any questions for Patrick?
Yeah, I would just ask, primarily for public consumption, if you can summarize just a change in perspective. If someone said, well, I know there's a lot of change in the document, it's a very extensive document, I appreciate the diligence and the work, but if someone would ask, well, Patrick, what are the big shifts when we look at the last plan versus where we are with this plan?
So I think I would highlight a number of areas. The first one, and it's more of it's been an incremental shift, but this definitely makes it an imperative going forward, is that anywhere we're making any kind of substantial investment, and substantial, is hundreds of thousands of dollars. It doesn't have to cross millions. We need to have very explicit public benefits, and that can take the form of a community benefits agreement or a public benefit agreement, or the type of agreements that Tricia talked about, first source hiring agreements. Everything there needs to be explicit public benefits, and I think in the past we have had bodies of work where it was, we always did that, and then we had other projects where it just wasn't that explicit, and I think we rightfully have been asked, well, what are the benefits of that? And so that needs to be explicit. And I think it also needs to be explicit so that we can say how it's in service to the plan. So if we're making a big investment in the post office, we should be able to articulate how is that in service to the goals of this plan, or how does that benefit broadly shared prosperity. So I would say that's one. And so you'll see us talking about public benefits, community benefits across a range of our work, as not just isolated areas. And then the second thing is, I think you'll see that work that we did that was more broad in its focus, particularly in economic development, is going to be more narrowly focused on companies that really are creating job opportunities for communities of color, for low-income neighborhoods, that are creating middle-income jobs that provide greater access for people who don't have college degrees. So prioritizing our work there and prioritizing our work around entrepreneurship and small business development, so that we can take our scarce resources and really put them in service of the outcomes that we're seeking in the plan. Part of this is, so I think maybe one of the things you're getting at is part of this is being able to say no to some of the other work that we've done historically, and so that's going to be a challenge, I think, for people who come to us, and they're going to have to understand why we're choosing to allocate resources towards providing assistance in one area, not another area, and it's going to be largely because we need to be focused on these outcomes. So I would say those are the two big things. There's a lot of little things, but that area of far more focus and being able to say no, and then the explicit public benefits, I think, is what you're going to see.
Okay, well, and that's helpful, and I think how it might be translated is someone in the public might look at this and say, well, you have more measurable objectives, therefore we can measure the return on our public dollar investment.
Yeah.
And that's something we can track over time. So, no, that's helpful. Thank you very much.
Anybody else have any comments or questions?
When the plan is actually implemented, so let's say we pass it here today, then we're going to start seeing it in the documents of all the projects that are coming forward, even as soon as next month.
Yeah. So when we talk about in our board reports about the alignment with plans, those things, this is the document that we will be referencing in that regard. And like Chair Kelly and I have been preparing for a council talk on the budget. It will show up in the budget that is going to be submitted to you for approval will be structured along these objectives as well. So beginning July 1, the dollars we spend will be in complete alignment with the plan.
So I think the feedback we got from City Council was that maybe we were too ambitious, and I frankly that's always been my perspective in business, that one sets goals that are lofty, and otherwise you're taking a back seat in the car, and I think we need to be in the front seat. So I'm pretty excited about this plan. Of course, I've been participating in it for, 8 months now, and I think we got great community input, we got great staff work. I think it's a document that can live for 5 years and be an important part about what we do. So I'd accept a motion.
Mr. Chair, can I just weigh in just one?
Absolutely.
And I apologize for being late. Ran a little late. Thank you. Apologize for being late. Ran a little late in Salem, so sorry for the late arrival. And this comment is meant with no disrespect to the staff that I know that worked very hard on it, or any of the citizens or the stakeholders that participated, but I struggle more than a bit with some of the goals that Patrick talked about raising the middle class and jobs for people that are in poverty in reality.
Okay, thank you for the comment.
The man
Mark.
in the sky.
Yes.
Any comments?
No, I'd just like to thank the staff and congratulate them for the great work. I love transparency and thank the public that participated for having interest and committing the time to participate. I think it's a great piece of work.
Okay.
I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. The ayes have it. The motion carries. Thank you.
Yep.
Item number 7 is an update on the Portland Development Commission Business and Workforce Equity Programs. Mr. Jackley.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, Executive Director Quinton, it's a pleasure to be here and to give you an update on our business and workforce equity programs. With me is Patricia Weekly, the agency's equity coordinator. Our presentation today will have a couple of parts, and in this first slide, you may recognize Rwanda Rogers, who was one of our first apprentices on South Waterfront and who's gone on to a successful construction career. And we'll talk about that emerging trend, not just on South Waterfront, but agency-wide in a couple of minutes. We're going to touch on 4 pieces here: strategies to close equity gaps, our fiscal year 2013-14 results, new initiatives, and then some of the next big issues that we have coming up. I'd also like to point out that our strategies adapt to changing times. We keep our eye on the prize, which is the financial and the utilization outcomes, but we do have to change and evolve based on changes in the economy. Obviously, boom times require a different strategy than recessions versus either an expanding or a contracting market. You know, for example, several years ago, I think every contractor, every subcontractor in Portland was scrambling for work as we were trying to build our way out of the Great Recession. Today, a lot of subcontractors are slammed. We've had experiences in the last year where some firms that we'd really hoped would bid on our projects just haven't because they've been too busy. So we're keeping a really close eye on those trends, and we're changing our strategies and our tactics as we go along to increase, or to meet our goal and our objective, which is the ever-increasing utilization of women minority-owned firms. In terms of our strategies, sorry about that. The first is that, there we go, there's some significant changes to point out. First of all, the equity policy now applies to enterprise zone projects, where it had not at some point in the past. Fair market land transactions, per the board's direction, and professional services. Professional services represents a particular challenge when they are done by our partners, because often the first thing somebody does when they're thinking about a project is they hire a design team, and sometimes those projects don't even come to us until the design work has been completed. On the other hand, PDC and our professional services group has had a ever increasing and ever better utilization of certified firms, and Patricia will touch on that when she talks about professional services later in the participation. Another thing is for E-zone projects, you know, about 85% of these involve machinery. Not that many of them involve construction. So the ones that aren't built yet, the policy applies to the whole project. For the ones sometimes where a shell will be built, but not the build-out, the policy applies to that build-out. And sometimes stuff is already built when they apply for that statewide tax abatement. They will now pay an additional 2% of the tax benefit into the community benefit fund. So the strategy there is to capture whatever we can at each stage of the project. Another set of strategies is we now place limits on self-performed work. We've seen in the past that some of the larger primes in particular would come in to work on a PDC project and they would say, well, we've already taken care of the MEP, or we're going to do all the concrete work ourselves. So this 10% limit is on both the total hard costs and on each division of construction. Now, they can still exceed 10%. They just have to come and talk to us and explain to us how their contracting strategy is still going to meet or exceed our goals. Another thing that we're doing is increased use of DBE certification. We're not adopting the federal program, but a DBE certification we have found is a better way to increase the utilization of women and minority-owned firms. Anybody can be a DBE, a white-owned firm can be a DBE, but women and minorities are presumed disadvantaged. And so we're finding out more and more that, you know, if it fits the project, it's a better certification to use than the state certification, which also includes ESBs. Another thing that we're doing is project-by-project goals. We always have our 20% floor, but in some cases, for example, on that $1 million parking lot job we had last year on Airport Way, Patricia set a 40% DBE goal. It was a low bid. It was won by actually an MBE firm. On the other hand, we look at availability. So when we looked at the design contracts for the Union Station rehab for the shell, the environmental, and the rail pieces, Patricia looked at the availability and assigned a 12% DBE goal. We still had our 20%, but on DBE, we looked at the availability, excuse me, because some of this work is extremely technical and you need federal certifications. So in that case, a 20% goal wasn't warranted. So we can kind of pick and choose the goals, but no matter what the number is, the strategy is always to create the highest possible utilization of women and minority-owned firms. The third set of strategies that we're using is alternative contracting and requiring predicating loan disbursements on prior approval of a contracting plan. So we're moving more and more to alternative contracting, which we believe will continue to meet the statutory tests. As you know, under Oregon state law, alternative contracting is anything other than low bid. And so in addition, we now require approval of the prime contractor's contracting plan. This is something Patricia has to sign off on before any loan disbursements are made. You all have seen Dawson Park, and I think most, if not all of you, participated throughout the project and in the celebration of it. And this is kind of the signature project for this kind of approach. Instead of low bid, we came to the board, and as the local contract review board, you all approved a contracting method called best value, which is kind of a combination of factors where it does include price, but it also looks at prior track record for using diverse firms. It looks for community connections. It looks to knowledge of the community. So we used a best value contracting. We had an extremely diverse evaluation panel. We not only used the city's minority evaluator representative, but we added some folks from the neighborhood as well. In the end, an MBE was selected, R&R contracting. Our construction services staff, led by Elise Hendrickson, did a great job. They negotiated a guaranteed maximum price. The project came in on time, on budget, no change orders from the contractors. It was a quality that won acclaim from the community. And we also hired an outside project manager, Patty Miles from the NEC Group, who grew up down the street from Dawson Park. And in the end, we had more than 70% minority workers employed on the project, and over 60% of the contracting dollars went to certified MBE firms. Now, you're not going to get that kind of result on every single project, but the idea of pushing the envelope, kind of a full court press across the board, we're starting to see a really good payoff. At this point, for this part of the presentation, is about the 2013-14 results, and I'm going to turn this part over to Patricia Weekly, and she'll walk you through the results by certified firms, workforce, and apprenticeship. Pat?
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Reflecting on our fiscal year 13-14 results, looking transactionally at our contracts, we achieved 24% participation with certified disadvantaged, minority, and women-owned and emerging small business enterprises. In regard to our workforce hours, we achieved 26% overall with minority workers, and we achieved 22% overall with apprentices. If we look at the breakdown based on certification, 9% went to minority firms, 8% of our contracting dollars was awarded to women-owned businesses, 5% to disadvantaged businesses, which is that federal certification John alluded to, and 2% to emerging small businesses. Looking at workforce utilization, there were 42,743, or 26% minority hours recorded, which is almost doubled from last year. Our apprenticeship participation increased significantly in fiscal year 13-14. There was 36,888 hours worked by apprentices, at 22% of the total workforce hours. Minority and female apprentices worked 11,300, or 7% of the total apprenticeship hours. And perhaps the most significant trend is the overall total. This shows that more and more minorities are reaching the journey level and turning their career paths into family wage jobs.
Thanks, Pat. Thanks, Pat. And of course, questions at any time in the presentation or afterwards. We also wanted to brief you on two significant upcoming initiatives that we have this summer and fall. TalentWell and contract compliance software, both of which were initiatives started by Patricia. TalentWell is just that. It's a well of talent. The 2011 disparity study showed that there was a significant gap between PDC project opportunities and the availability of disadvantaged women and minority-owned architectural, engineering, and technical professional firms. So to help close this gap, our staff, in collaboration with the WBE firm EcoReal and OWAMI, launched a pilot project that became TalentWell, which will be an online collaborative network that showcases qualified and innovative DMWBE, so it's DBE, women and minority, professional services firms to provide customized resources, education, business alliance strategies, and business prospects. The initial projects will be those of the City of Portland and PDC. We're going to require our partners to go to this platform to bid and to talk to experienced certified firms. We've also gotten a great response from agencies as wide as Metro, TriMet, some of the counties. So once we get it up and running, we'll start working with them as well. And we anticipate a formal launch this summer. We also anticipate, assuming all goes well, and we learn lessons from the launch of the platform, the opportunity to possibly expand the platform to construction contracting and to other opportunities as well. In terms of contract compliance software, this one's kind of cool. You know, currently we have an IGA with the city, and they collect the certified payroll and the contracting reports on all PDC-funded projects, and we get a monthly report from them, and it's not right on the end of the month. It takes them a week or so to put it together, and they do a really good job with it. The challenge is that it's always looking backwards. So with contract compliance software, we want to ensure, because it's real time, the construction firm would fill it out every Friday, and we'd they'd hit a button, and we would get the results directly then, because we want to make sure in particular that minority and women firms stay on the job once selected, that they're not switched out at some point during the process. And number two, that their dollar scope is not reduced arbitrarily, both of which can be common in the industry. Another advantage of real-time reporting is that we can see how the project is going. We can find out exactly where they are in terms of their use of women and minority apprentices and journey workers. And we also believe that within a year or so, we're going to save a significant amount of money over what the IGA would have cost, because we'll be getting that information directly. A final benefit is the ability to track the performance of primes over time. So right now, on any given project, we have a pretty good idea how that majority-owned prime is doing on a month-to-month basis, but we don't have the ability to say, wow, here's how they've done on all PDC projects over the last 5 years, or here's how they've done on vertical construction versus horizontal, here's how they've done on mixed use. And the ability to have all that data in one place and the ability to manipulate and analyze that data through the software, I think will be invaluable for us. And then the final thing is I wanted to tee up some questions that we are still looking for the answers to. I don't think anyone has the perfect solution, but I wanted to make the board aware. The first is, how do we manage the boom times? Everybody remembers the Great Recession, but a lot of us remember the last great boom, and women and minority firms typically were left behind. It's clear they did not participate in that wealth creation. They did not participate to the extent they should have in all the jobs and the projects. So one thing that we are always keeping our eye on is, how do we manage these boom times as long as they last? And that applies to the workforce, to professional services, as well as construction contracting. Another question or challenge that is always in front of us is, how do we support minority developers? And there's a number of ways PDC and others can do it. For us, we work real closely with NAMAC, the National Association of Minority Contractors, Oregon. PDC has an ongoing relationship with the Metropolitan Contracting Improvement Partnership to help shore up the business end of minority developers. But to tell you the truth, and I'm going to steal a line from Commissioner Moelis, because he talks about the job piece this way. He always says that the best social program in the world is a family wage job with health care and good benefits. And that same thing is true for minority developers. The best way to increase their viability, their wealth, their ability to compete for projects is work. And so to the extent that we continue to aggressively pursue the strategies that we're doing, we're not afraid to learn from other people and see what's working. One thing that we're taking a close look at is, if you remember the other year, Portland Community College had a very large construction bond. I think it came close to, I want to say $1 billion, a third of $1 billion, like 350 million. So they had a number of campuses, and each campus had a construction project anywhere between 50 and 80 million. So they picked a prime for each of the different campuses, but they had two innovations. One, they required a joint venture between a majority prime, because of the size of the bonding, and either a minority or a women-owned prime as an equal partner. And then the second thing they did was, they didn't turn to the minority prime and said, here, you can do all the carpentry, or you can do all the site work, or you can do the flagging. They carved out, in essence, a mini prime within the footprint of that project. So James Faison, for example, with Faison Concrete, he also has a prime contracting company. He did, in essence, an entire building, start to finish. That increases his bonding capacity, his ability to borrow, his ability to increase his cash flow, his ability to take on other projects. O'Neill Electric has the same thing, and a number of local contractors were able to do that. So that's something we'll take a look at on our big projects, is how do you, it's not a carve out, but it's like a mini prime within a great big project. And so a couple of other things, how do we approach the big projects? There's some things looming on the horizon. The post office could happen, Centennial Mills, the North District and South Waterfront. And, at some point, these projects are so big that it becomes less about the percentage than the actual dollars expended. I know for a number of years on South Waterfront, the MWESB percentage rarely exceeded 10%. And you might go, wow, that's a problem. But the dollars that went to minority firms on South Waterfront exceeded the total dollars that went to minority firms on all the rest of PDC's portfolio. So you've probably seen a number of contractors that we work with, they won their Journey card on South Waterfront. 22% of the workers on South Waterfront who earned their Journey card were people of color. And so they were able to increase their bonding, their ability to bid, their ability to estimate. So we want to look at the percentage, but in some of these cases, the dollars are so big, the dollars count as well. And then finally, how do we approach community benefit agreements? Patrick touched on that as a key point for the new strategic plan. We've just concluded one successful CBA agreement in Northeast. We participated in one. Pat was a member of the group that put together the community benefit agreement for the Gateway Park that PDC helped funded. And so we've got to be willing to listen to the community, work with the community, and then at the same time make sound decisions, because there's a lot of ways to define the community. Everybody thinks they are the community, and everybody's right. We also have to put working groups together that make sense. So those are challenges that we're always going to be working with, always looking to the board for direction and input, of course, and happy to answer any questions or discussion you might have.
Commissioners?
Okay, well, I'll start. That's a great presentation, and I'm curious a little bit more, just because being on the board as many years as I have now, we do talk about the numbers and our goals and how we've met them on projects, and I know we did have the recession, so there was a period when there weren't very many projects going on, but we've definitely ramped that up, and I'm just really curious as to how we're tracking project by project these numbers, because with the percentages, I'm unclear where they come from.
Sure. We do track project by project. We track based on ethnicity, certification status, and we also track based on whether or not it's a direct bid or a development agreement or an IGA. So we certainly have that data that we can share with you. If you have a specific project in mind, I may be able to share those exact percentages right now.
Well, I mean, I think about, like, for instance, a lot of the work that we're doing on the Burnside Bridgehead, and you know, some of the other projects that we've funded, that I just wonder, what are the projects that are counted for the percentages that say that we've met a 24% MWESB utilization? Is it all of the projects that we funded, or are they specific projects?
It's all the projects that we funded, either sponsor projects or PDC direct bid projects. So we put those together. We, of course, look at the availability of certified firms. For example, if our project is a highly technical project, a good example is elevators. There are no certified firms regionally that can actually perform on that. So we would make a reduction in our contracting dollars based on availability, and then we would test our participation against that. You mentioned Burnside Bridgehead. We do have data in regard to what the actual MWD and ESB participation is on that specific project.
And when John was speaking of the compliance software program where, you know, sometimes, let's say, a scope is reduced of work, or even potentially maybe they were originally listed and then they were knocked out of the project, is that information also available when we track that, or do we just...
Well, it will be available once we get we don't have the software right now.
Okay, so
we've
certain
been
numbers.
Yeah, we have it in our budget for the upcoming year. We've talked to TriMet. They use a program called Elations, and there's a number of, it's the kind of thing we would scout it out. We would end up doing an RFP and have it subject to competitive bid. But yeah, that's the kind of thing we'll be able to find out in real time once we have the software and the reporting up in place.
So to date, so far, we've been tracking that manually with our city partners or contract compliance consultants, but there isn't a possibility of error in regard to tracking that data, because if we're not in communication with that developer or that prime contractor or even that subcontractor, we would not be able to have true numbers in regard to whether or not a certified firm actually participated. So you're correct, there is room for error in that.
Okay, that's what I wanted to check, because I think that sometimes, you know, maybe initially a developer or contractor may have something in mind as to what they wanted to reach and where they were going to go, and then people get kicked off the project and you think the number is a lot higher than what in actuality the number ended up being, and that skews the information that we receive quite a bit.
Yeah, and that's a disturbing aspect of the business. Approval of contracting plans, you know, is typically based on what the prime gives us. And it would be very disturbing to find out afterwards that they got approval of their plan, only to find out that they removed a certified firm from a very large scope of that project. With the ability to monitor this real time, we can stop it.
A couple questions. Thanks for the information, the presentation. Are we able to look backwards at 2009 and decide, okay, we have this many MWESB participants and we have this many today, and they were allocated this way in 09 and they're allocated this way today, just to get a sense for what's gone on? Do we have that kind of information?
You mean by firm or in the aggregate?
In the aggregate, but also allocated among different areas of specialization. Do we have that kind of information?
We have it, yeah, we could go back and get it.
And I'm just curious what has happened, and if I pass someone on the street and they say, well, what is PDC doing to change those numbers or make them better? And I know we have programs in place, but I think it would be insightful if you kind of share that with us generally to the extent you can now, as far as this is what we've done and we're doing since, you know, the crisis in 2008, 2009 to make those circumstances better. And along those lines, this is what is going to result in more funding from PDC ultimately being allocated to MWESB participants.
Yeah, I think the first thing I'd share is that for projects subject to our equity policy, even in the lean years, we met our percentages, or our partners met our 20% or more goal. But what you saw was the dollar volume shrink significantly. So for 13-14, the percentages that we've reported to you today, those typically would have been projects that probably started in 2012, maybe even 2011. And so the total number is probably under 10. Whereas today we have projects happening across the board. So the volume is increasing. So I think the first thing I'd say is that we are very aggressively pursuing the boom times to ensure that firms don't get left behind. So that's number one. Number two, we're finding that the combination of these strategies, whether it's the 10% limit on self-performed work, particularly Patricia engages in a lot of very difficult behind-the-scenes conversations, because we sometimes will get a great sounding set of promises or a set of plans at the start. Then it comes time for the loan disbursement. Patricia looks at the contracting plan, compares it to the actuals, and goes, And so we've had several projects where she has had to go toe-to-toe with the developer or the prime, and in some cases, she's been able to go from 0 on up to 26% in one case that I remember from last year. So number two, I would say that the staff is committed, it's expert, and they know how to make results happen. And then I think the third thing I would say is, you know, the bottom line is that you can have all the processes and policies that you want, but if the dollars haven't moved, if the needle hasn't moved on the contracts and the dollars, and we're not transparent about how that happens, then nothing matters. But the upside of that is that we've continually been able to push the envelope. I think we probably lead the region in terms of utilization on our own and partnership projects. And so we're always opening to doing things newer, different, more aggressive, and we do them with our partners. We really have good, solid partnerships with everybody from Constructing Hope to Oregon Tradeswomen, NAMAC, MCIP. We work daily with all the players, kind of finding out what's going on out there, who's doing what, what's working, what's not working, where the opportunities are, and then trying to connect our contractors and our subs with those opportunities.
And I would say that the alternative bidding process that we were talking about is one of those steps, because we're looking at selecting a provider in a different way that isn't as prescribed, but will satisfy other objectives of the agency. So, and I'm speaking for you, but I'm assuming that's something we look at as a very positive way in which we can impact who's getting work and how that work is being allocated throughout the city.
It is, and you'll have one on the agenda later today.
Thanks.
Good report, and I think a lot of the changes that you're proposing will help move the ball forward. And I think this is an area that PDC has gained a lot of ground in the last 5-10 years. Having said that, it's always evolving, it's always changing. The software that you were talking about, will that track both subcontracting packages and apprenticeship hours?
I think there's.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
As a
Because
matter of
I know that we saw on the South Waterfront Apprenticeship Agreement, when we were checking the numbers on every project every month, we came out with a lot better end results than if we were checking them every 6 months or only once when the project was done. So to be checking stuff in real time would be very meaningful.
I had one more comment too. I just wanted to make sure that, because I know Patricia obviously has a really difficult job because she's having to look at the contracting plan, see if everyone's doing what they're saying, and then follow through as the project goes on. And when people make changes, it's hard for her to be able to keep on track of all of that. Do you feel like you get the support that you need in order to be able to manage and control, kind of that difficult task? Because I mean, honestly, I know that there are people out there that don't do the right thing and that can really skew information to you. And I think as an agency, we really need to be accountable with our dollars because that's really our leverage. And when you give the money, whatever they've done, it's done. But when Patricia kind of has like that leverage of holding the dollars back and being able to have the time to implement and make sure that what people are saying they're doing is how you're actually going to affect change in this whole industry that I think is skewed quite a bit.
Thank you. And if I may, I observed that and I acknowledge that. To be authentic, I noticed that was an incredible task for me to accomplish. And so I lobbied for that support and that authority to be able to push back and leverage that responsibility against indifference or lackadaisical attitude around business equity. So my answer would be, as I negotiate and lobby for that support, I find that I'm getting a positive response from John and from Patrick.
I'd also add that given PDC's reorganization, we now have the development department and a separate real estate and lending department. We've always worked well with UDD, of course. I used to be there myself. And we have a great relationship with the real estate and lending department. Patricia's desk is literally just feet away from the loan officers, and they are always talking, comparing notes, and the real estate and lending team has just been terrific about proactively going to her ahead of time, checking in on the disbursements, making sure that the contractors are where they're supposed to be. So that reorganization and I would say the enthusiasm of the real estate and lending team along with UDD has been a real internal advantage as well.
Commissioner Edelin, any questions?
No, I just have a comment. Great to see the improving results. I love the innovative approach and some of the new software things you're taking. John mentioned South Waterfront, and I know as a participant, it took an awful lot of work to make that happen. His comment about review it monthly is exactly a big piece of making it happen, and staff was a great partner in that. One of the questions I've always had is for the apprentices and some of the smaller firms, where do they go from the project, the subject project to the next project? So I've always had a concern about after they've completed one, what is their future and what does it entail? Maybe not an answer from PDC, but just an observation to see how we can have broader impact in the community. Thank you.
Commissioner, excuse me, one observation I'd share is that we particularly see good results in that area where you have extended work over an extended period of time. So when we look at 22% of everyone who journeyed out on South Waterfront were people of color. The advantage that we had there was one project after another that were very large, that had large number of workers. It is harder for apprentices to go from one project to another project, and I know Commissioner Moelis, you're the expert in this. I know BOLI tracks it. It's not something that we do because workers will go from our project to someplace in the region or another part of the state, but.
Yeah, and I think Commissioner Edlund, if I can chime in, the Bureau of Labor and Industries and the Apprenticeship and Training Division specifically tracks each registered apprentice in every program, and they do audits on every program, and every program has to file an affirmative action program. They're audited, I don't know if every year, but I think every year. And they have to set goals for recruitment and retention and graduation for apprentices and for women and people of color. And those statistics are available through BOLI. And I've always advocated, looking at apprenticeship records job by job is helpful. But if you want a really true look at what's happening, you need to look at each JATC or Joint Apprenticeship Training and Committee and see if they're journeying people out, or if it's just, they can have 15% women, but if only 2% of them ever graduate, that's not a win. So you need to track them throughout their apprenticeship, and the graduation number is what everybody needs to be focused on. That's the end goal. Not everybody graduates from college that starts. Not everybody that starts an apprenticeship is going to journey out, but there's widely varying numbers in a lot of the programs about how many people journey out, and that's important to track.
Well, one thing we've done, building on an innovation that started in South Waterfront that I guess 2 or 3 years ago we've now applied PDC-wide, is we require on projects that are subject to the equity policy that all of the subcontractors be a signatory to a BOLI-approved training program that has been in existence for 5 years and has produced graduates. There's union and non-union options in every division of construction, so it's not a union versus open shop thing. But we wanted to ensure, because we saw the success on South Waterfront, that developers and PDC and contractors had a consistent commitment to training and to careers in construction. And so that transition has kind of moved pretty seamlessly. And it was something that they pioneered on South Waterfront, and again, because of the results, we've applied PDC-wide a couple of years ago.
So we need to keep moving along here. So thank you very much for your report.
Thanks.
Gotta go. Okay, our next order of business is item 10, adopting the revisions to the Portland Development Commission Green Commission Green Building Policy. Yeah.
She's going to say it better than you just did.
I think that's right. Welcome.
Hello, how are you? Good afternoon. My name is Amy Nagy, and I am a business development coordinator with the Central City team here at PDC. And just as you said, Chair, today I'm here to present an update to the PDC's green building policy. The policy sets a standard for the quality of construction with regard to the environmental performance for certain PDC projects. And with that, we're asking the board to take action on approving the revisions to the green building policy. As many of you know, for decades, the City of Portland has been recognized as an international leader in sustainability and green building through conservation, as well as green design and construction principles that guide land use planning and urban development. In particular, over the last 15 years, there's been a significant market shift in understanding that green building practices mitigate harmful impacts of the construction and operation of buildings while creating social and environmental benefits, including improving community health. Portland's focus and dedication on green development has also created an economic development and competitive advantage for local design and construction sector, and that is something that PDC has led an effort on to market this expertise through our We Build Green Cities initiative. As a bit of background, the city and PDC have their own separate policies, and I've provided a timeline here that shows the adoption and amendments of those respective policies, as well as the high-level requirements associated with each amendment that's happened. The city and its actions are along the top horizontal line there, and PDC and its actions are below. In 2001, the City of Portland adopted its first green building policy that required all city buildings to become LEED certified. In support of the city's goals, PDC followed and developed its own policy by attaching green building requirements to a finance threshold. Both policies have been updated every 4 to 5 years, with the city continuing to leverage plans and policies, most notably the Climate Action Plan. And if you direct your attention to the amendments, you'll see how each of the policies have evolved to both keep pace with the market development in the green building industry, as well as refining sort of implementation and creating flexibility to incorporate more projects. So if you'll notice, for instance, in PDC's activities, the initial policy required a performance level of achieving LEED certified, and then we increased that performance level with the first policy amendment to LEED Silver. We adjusted we made a second policy amendment adding Earth Advantage as an additional certification option to LEED, and then we have our third amendment, which we're discussing here today. And just by note, City Council did approve the city's most recent policy update last month on Earth Day, April 22nd. The policy has 4 objectives that address protecting human health and natural resources, creating equitable access for healthy buildings for Portlanders, growing Portland's global reputation in sustainable development, as well as providing flexibility for our borrowers and our partners to ensure compliance. The proposed changes to the policy today seek to further these objectives by maintaining alignment with the city's policy, while also creating a path for more projects to have a role into contributing to healthy neighborhoods and clarifying language to make the policy a little bit more user-friendly. The policy applies to all PDC projects that include both a transaction as well as an improvement. There are 3 types of transactions covered by this policy update. A project receiving PDC financial assistance of greater than or equal to $200,000, all real property dispositions by the agency, as well as PDC owned and leased real property at the time of a lease agreement or a planned improvement. PDC's financial assistance is how the current policy has been applied, and a change to that we are proposing today is to lower that investment threshold from $300,000 to $200,000 and drop the requirements that PDC's investment be greater than 10% of the project cost. The last 2 transaction types I just described are new additions to the policy, and they would increase the opportunity for PDC to have a more positive impact on the built environment throughout Portland. In terms of project types or improvements, there are also 3 categories: new construction and major renovation of commercial, mixed-use, and residential buildings, tenant improvements, as well as new or renovated standalone parking structures that are not a part of a larger building scope. And the standalone parking structures would be a new type of improvement under the policy, and I'll explain a little bit more on the rationale on that in just a moment. This here is a matrix that indicates the building standards a project would be required to perform under with the revised policy. So on the top row there, new construction and major renovations, the 2 notable changes under this project category are a decrease in the building square footage threshold from 70,000 to 50,000 square feet, and increasing the LEED certification level from silver to gold, which is on par now with the city's requirement. Buildings less than 50,000 square feet also have an option to pursue the Earth Advantage certification and also achieve gold level. For tenant improvements, the row immediately below, we have also decreased the square footage from 10,000 to 5,000 square feet, and we've created distinct pathways for various types of the tenant improvements to better align with the scope of improvement with the appropriate rating system. So for instance, a space that's greater than 5,000 square feet and is undergoing substantial modifications to the building's primary building systems, which are the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, would be required to achieve LEED Silver. On the other hand, a space that's less than 5,000 square feet or is just undergoing minor improvements would use the city's Green TI Guide, which is actually not a certification, but rather a prescriptive checklist from which that guides the owner's decisions for creating a more sustainable space. Across these two types of improvements, we propose to let the project owner and their design team actually choose the rating system in which they would pursue under each certification versus us being a little bit more narrower and defining that for them. And ultimately, we feel this revision sort of builds in the flexibility that our partners have called for to meet projects really where they're at while also ensuring that they're performing to the highest level that's feasible. And parking structures. The standalone parking structures are a new addition to the policy. The U.S. Parking Council has recently developed a green garage certification, which seeks to leverage the potential of a garage to do more than just park cars. Instead, it would play a role in green infrastructure, offering strategies to reduce emissions, as well as just generally repositioning a garage to be more of a contributor to a community. In terms of process, we will maintain the good faith deposit that's currently required, as well as the exemptions clause, leaving those as is. So these require board approval for any projects that are seeking an exemption from the policy. We propose that PDC's executive director maintain authority over the administrative procedures which guide the implementation of how the policy is applied. And I believe you all have a copy of the draft procedures in your board documents today. So just in closing, the policy contributes to the city's larger climate goals identified under policies and plans, including the recent update to the Climate Action Plan and the recently passed energy benchmarking policy. It strengthens Portland's leadership in green development by keeping the city at the forefront of innovation in the built environment, and it furthers PDC's place-based investment in creating healthy neighborhoods. And so we ask that the board take action today by approving these revisions to the policy. And I also just wanted to note that we are joined today by Alan Scott, who is a principal of a local sustainability consulting firm, YR&G, who is going to join us and provide some testimony on behalf of the policy. So thank you.
Any questions?
Wait till he comes up.
Why don't we bring Mr. Scott forward? Welcome, Alan.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to speak here today. I wanted to come in support of the updates to the green building policy and share a few of my thoughts on why I think it's important. While Portland design and development community overall over the last 15 years that we've had these policies in place have embraced green building strategies and made it part of their practices, and they've integrated many of these best practices into their standard way of doing their work. These approaches can be as varied as the variety of designs that we see in the projects that are developed. Just as we still need zoning ordinances and building codes to set some minimum standards and minimum requirements for projects, we also need a green building policy that establishes sort of a common baseline and minimum performance standards for projects developed in the city of Portland. Projects can always do more along the lines of sustainability, but we also need to make sure that none of them fall short of these critical practices that support social, economic, and environmental values that are part of the sustainability in our city. I also want to touch on the role that green certifications play in development projects. It is possible to design and build a green building without a certification system, but a certification system plays an important role in these projects, in that systems such as LEED and Earth Advantage add value to the process. They help ensure that the results are achieved at the highest level possible. Development projects often have sort of tight timelines and competing priorities. Lots of people involved have critical responsibilities. And so a green building certification inserted into that mix serves to do the following. It, first of all, clearly communicates what the requirements are to all the project team members, so they're all on board with what they're supposed to do to make that building green building. It provides a structure and a rigor to the process that keeps those green building goals and values at the forefront of action during the project throughout the project life cycle. And finally, one of the key elements that serves as a way to validate that the goals and requirements have been achieved in the project at the end, so that you get what you intended to at the onset. Without this kind of responsibility and accountability imposed by a green building certification system, it is not uncommon to see important elements slip through the cracks as a project develops. So it's an important feat to hold everybody's attention on the critical elements. So finally, just kind of wanted to close and say, I'm very proud to be in Portland and have a city that took a leadership stake long ago in green building and sustainability. And we have, through that process, inspired other municipalities and governments across the country and around the world. And so this is an important element. So a strong and current green building policy is part of the way that we are going to stay at the forefront and continue to be a leader in this element and continue to inspire people. So thank you for your attention today.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions? Mark.
Yeah, just a couple comments. One is I'd love to see us raising the bar. Personally, I think we're kind of hanging on by our fingernails here in Portland in terms of leadership position, and I think the public process could play a valuable role in moving it forward. Two other comments. One is, while I support USGBC and other systems that encourage green building, we all know that they can be gamed to a certain extent. So I would encourage staff to look for true deep green meaning as opposed to check the boxes. And anytime we have an opportunity to encourage innovation, such as the living machine that's being installed over at the Lloyd District, I think currently, I would certainly applaud those efforts. Thanks.
Any other comments? I was just reflecting that I think we have in Mr. Edlin the foremost green developer in the United States, and Colas Construction built the first living building, challenge building in the United States, I think, and I happen to have done the first LEED certified building in the West Coast 15 years ago. So I think it would be really odd for us to vote against this. So I'll take a motion.
I didn't get to ask any questions. You don't want to take it for granted. Come on.
Do you have a question?
No, I wanted to say thanks for the presentation. And Patrick talked earlier about changes to our strategic plan and measurables. And if someone from the public says, well, I believe in green, but does it come at too high of a cost? And I would argue with anyone who would say that, but that's a question someone could pose. What is the added cost of increased green investment? And I refer to it as investing, because it really is. We're investing in our environment. So we want to address that for the public.
Sure. So I'll address it from the public side, and then Ellen, if you want to, you can give some numbers to it as well. So yes, on the front end of a project, there is additional cost, right? And a lot of that comes sort of with the points that Alan was making around going through that process and setting out the goals and documenting to ensure that the project is living up to those goals that it initially set forth. I think the savings that we see and that aren't always discussed are really on the back end, and it's a financial savings in terms of both energy as well as water, and then it's also a longer term savings when we're talking about the reduction in carbon emissions, which is our biggest challenge right now in terms of green building and building performance. So the goal right now, I think, within our policy as well is, yes, while we're on the forefront in many instances around green building, we also still have a number of projects that could do something that to date have not. And we have future projects that, no matter their size, have a role in that. And so in creating the policy to be as flexible as possible, where we're not attempting to overburden a project with additional costs to be green, but yet providing kind of a plethora of options that, as I said in my testimony, really meet the project where it's at.
And I guess I'll pick up right where you left off, Amy, and talk about the flexibility as I think an important element of controlling costs and maximizing benefits in a green building project, because every project is different, and there's different requirements and different opportunities and with a certain site or a building program. So the green building policy and the certification systems that are behind it allow a lot of flexibility for choices of strategies and approaches to green building that allow for that sort of economic and sustainability benefit in a project development. A couple other specific things I'll note along those lines. One, some of the things associated with doing a certified green building, like energy modeling, are used actually as a decision-making tool to support good economic investments in the most energy-efficient technology at the most cost-effective level. So they're not just a validation of performance, but they're a tool for cost-effective design that maximizes return on investment and minimizes upfront costs. And likewise, things like commissioning of building system commissioning result in making sure that the building is operating the way it was intended so that the investment is achieved over time in performance. And at the same time, some of those upfront costs that Amy mentioned in terms of like just the certification process, people have learned how to do that and have become very efficient at it. So it's a very minor element, and it's part of project management of making sure that you get from here to there in that achievement.
Sure, and thank you very much. And that was a question for anyone who still might be a naysayer with regard to the value of focusing on green in our environment. But I would really emphasize in the future any projects that we do bring forward that have the green focus, and I would think that would be all of them. We definitely spell out clearly those economic benefits as well as just a general social value. So thanks.
Thank you.
With that, I'll move approval.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, the ayes have it. The motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item is the update on the Portland Development Commission's office lease and future space needs. Jina, John.
Mr. Chairs, Commissioners, I'm John Jackley at PDC, and Jina, Bjelland and I are here today to update you on the current lease agreement for PDC's office space here in the Mason-Erman building and to share our space needs, which, as you know, have changed significantly over the past few years. So the item before you today is informational, but we hope to receive your feedback and direction on proceeding with the due diligence to inform our space options moving forward. The PDC is moving, oh, sorry, that's your part.
Thanks, John. I'm Jina Bjelland. Our current lease term, though we moved here to this building a decade ago, the current lease began in 2010 and ends in 2020, and it's also subject to a potential either extension or early termination. If PDC were to find an alternative space that suits our current needs, we have early termination options that would allow us to vacate our space in this building as early as July 2017. The various off-ramp options call for an 18-month or a 12-month notice, depending on which of the two options would be chosen. This means that if we were to pursue one of these options, PDC would potentially need to notify the building owner as early as January 2016. Maintaining our lease through 2020 and subleasing is also an option. As you realize, our space needs now are substantially less than they were in 2010, when our staff was over 213 people, not including temporary or student workers, and had substantial office needs as well as numerous conference rooms. Today we have 95 staff and less of a demand for both private offices and meeting rooms. Recently we phased out our ground floor reception area. Floors 2, 3, and 4 are leased to growing traded sector businesses, with Squarespace, a popular web services firm, occupying 2 of these 3 floors.
In 2010, as you recall, we issued an RFI, a request for information, for professional office space before ultimately choosing to renegotiate our lease and remain here. We recommend following an RFI process this time as well. In addition to detailing our projected space needs, the RFI would include the factors that will influence any potential relocation decision, including the potential to act as a neighborhood catalyst in one of our urban renewal areas, the potential to strengthen our community partnerships by possibly co-locating with other public, private, or institutional tenants, proximity to light rail, and other forms of public transportation, and of course, cost. So in short, the RFI should outline for respondents how PDC plans to live the values of the new strategic plan through this relocation process. And based on the responses received, we would return with recommendations and seek board approval to commence with any negotiations. So whether in Old Town Chinatown or in a different location, we see this as an opportunity to leverage the agency's physical presence on behalf of an underserved area, the opportunity to continue to have a positive and catalytic impact on a neighborhood, and of course to ensure that PDC is wisely investing public funds. So with that, we'd be happy to answer any questions that you all might have.
I don't have any. That's a strategic and rational approach to what we're facing. So I think you can't start something like that soon enough, given that we are an institution that tries to redevelop and stimulate development, and we can use ourselves to do that. So I like the plan.
Yeah, and you know, Old Town still has a lot of work to do, but it's certainly in a different place than it was 5 years ago when we were, you know, looking at this again. So I think it'll be really interesting to see what kind of responses we get.
Yeah, I think everything's on the table, Commissioner.
Commissioner Edelin?
I concur with the prior two comments and suggest to move forward. The only thing I'd like to make sure that we do, and I'm sure you're looking at this already, and that is assets that we as PDC own or control, including those in your look at what you're considering.
Yes, Commissioner.
The answer is yes.
Yes, sir.
I think everybody's in concurrence that this is a good path to take, so go forth.
Okay, we'll proceed with the RFI. We'll be able to get it out very shortly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we need to, does everybody need a break or want to keep on moving here?
I'm fine.
Keep on going. Okay, so we need to adjourn the PDC board meeting, and I need to read this correctly so I don't get in trouble. The meeting of the Portland Development Commission is now adjourned. The members of the Portland Development Commission will now meet as the Commission's Audit Committee to consider approving the extension of PDC's contract with its independent auditor. Catherine.
Good afternoon, Chair Kelly, Commissioners. My name is Catherine Kaminski, and I am PDC's Accounting Manager. I am here to present Resolution 7114 to accept and approve the extension of the Moss Adams contract with the City Auditor for the financial audit of PDC's comprehensive annual financial report for fiscal year 2015. The current contract was approved in May 2012 and allowed for 2 one-year extensions at the discretion of the City Auditor. With input from the Bureau auditees, including PDC, the decision was made to exercise the first of the 2 extensions. That extension was approved by City Council on May 6th. We are also requesting the authorization to accept and approve the future extension, should it be exercised, be delegated to the Executive Director.
I think I would say publicly, we've been very pleased with the relationship that we've established with Moss Adams, and I think the audits have run very smoothly, and we've received good service. So I think it's rational to approve the extension. I don't know what was built in the way of a fee escalation. I should have asked this in my briefing. Do you recall? Or was there? I think they gave us a schedule of fees.
There's a slight increase each year, and then this year there's an added increase of about 10% for the implementation of the GASB 68 standards.
Okay.
I'm sorry, the implementation of what?
The GASB 68 standard, it's a new standard requiring changes to our pension disclosures.
You don't know about GASB 68?
I can tell you a lot about remodeling.
There's
I
some
don't
additional
think
work.
many people could tell you about GAD, but I'm familiar with it.
There's some additional work required for them to report accurately
Yeah.
on our PERS liability, so they
Yeah.
have to do some extra work on that.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, that makes sense. Hey, watch
Full
out.
Employment Act.
We love accountants. No, I would move approval unless there are any other, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to jump anyone.
I concur with Commissioner Wilhoit.
Commissioner Edlin?
No comment.
All right.
I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it.
Thanks, Catherine.
We're going to adjourn the PDC Board Audit Committee, and the members of the Portland Development Commission will now meet as the Commission's local contract review board to consider the next item on the agenda. Action item number 13. Adopting findings in support of and exempting the Nelson Parking Lot Improvement Project from competitive bidding. Jina and Elsie.
Elise.
Elise, did I win? Oh, sorry.
It's happened before. I'm Elise Hendrickson, Construction Services Coordinator.
Brian's pulling it up. He's pulling it up.
It's my daughter's middle name, so we're good. Let's move on. Elise.
All right. Just pulling up my PowerPoint. Okay. So we're here today to ask the local contract review board to approve an alternative contracting process for the Nelson parking lot improvements. The site is located in Quinton neighborhood. It's bounded to the north by North Argyle and to the south by North Willis and to the east by the North Interstate Avenue. The site consists of 6 connected one-story warehouse buildings, 2 open yards, and the corner parking lot. The corner parking lot's shown in yellow, and that's the subject of the presentation today. So we are asking the LCRB to adopt the findings in support of and exempting the Nelson Parking Lot Improvements Project from low bid solicitation. We'll also include a brief description of the scope of work and a review of the schedule. So as you know, ORS 279C.335 and PDC's LCRB rules provide that the LCRB may exempt certain public contracts from the low bid process if it is unlikely that such exemption will encourage favoritism in the awarding of the public contract or substantially diminish competition for the contract, and the awarding of the public contract under the exemption will result in substantial cost savings to the agency. We do not anticipate favoritism or diminished competition because the contractor selection will be via a competitive RFP. We will not use a pre-qualification process, and a committee of PDC staff and external reviewers will evaluate the proposals based on objective criteria. We do anticipate substantial cost savings because the RFP process evaluates proposers based on previous related experience, project approach, and cost, which are expected to reduce the risk of cost overruns, work scope changes, and claims. The RFP process, compared to the low bid process, allows for the opportunity for the contractor to review and seek clarification of documents prior to the negotiation of the GMP contract. This is expected to reduce the likelihood of change orders, which are often a product of gaps in the documents. Finally, incorporating the demolition, remediation, and the public improvements under a single contract streamlines the construction schedule and is expected to reduce overall costs. As required, PDC published a 14-day notice of intent to waive low bid contracting on April 27th of this year. A public meeting was held on May 11th. No one attended the meeting, and there were no written comments. So the scope of work for this project includes demolition of an existing 800 square foot one-story structure, which is shown in red, and the remediation of petroleum contaminated soils, which are shown in gray. The scope of work for the public improvements include a new gravel courtyard with power and water connections for up to 6 food carts, a neighborhood kiosk, new asphalt, landscaping, and stormwater management basins. So far to date, we've submitted the drawings for permit. After this meeting, we will release the RFP towards the end of May. Proposals would be due by mid-June, interviews if needed, and the intent to award of the contract would be by the end of June. Contract negotiation, we'd expect to be complete by mid-July. Notice to proceed to the contractor would be by the end of July, and construction would occur between August and October of this year. So in conclusion, we are asking the LCRB to adopt the findings in support of and exempting the Nelson parking lot improvements project from low bid solicitation. Are there any questions?
Mr. Mullis?
I know you said that there wasn't going to be a pre-qualification, but then you also mentioned a number of check-ins where you were going to be making sure that the contractor submitted a good bid and wasn't going to be coming back for change orders. So that would just be my focus, is making sure that that is robust so that we don't end up with a number here, or we don't start with a number here and end up with a number here like we've done on some low bid projects before. I can support this method if that's if those safety not valves isn't the right word, but if those guardrails are built in so that we don't get those change orders and the price escalates on us.
Well, that's the true test of the good GMP negotiations that we would have the opportunity to do.
Good, thank you.
And John Molis took us through, in summary, the performance on Dawson Park, and that's the type of process we're looking at here. Mm-hmm. And he said it was done on time and no change orders, and it was on budget. So we have at least a roadmap for having been through this before, and I think we're positioned to do it again, and I like the idea of being very strategic with regard to when we're implementing this non-low bid process. So I commend everyone for taking this approach, and I think Commissioner Molis just hit the nail on the head. You know, we know that. We're trying to make sure we get a fee structure that is fixed, and we're going to work within that structure, and we're going to consider other factors when we make that selection. Now I'm going to ask you an accounting question because I'm an accounting type guy, and it's a tricky question. And if you don't know, you can look it up and send me a note. I like to build up my questions. How do we define favoritism or substantial? And it says there can be no favoritism and there are substantial cost savings. Is there any way that's defined? And I'm just curious because I'm anticipating, probably without any grounds, if anyone raises that question, how do you know there was, how do you prove there was no favoritism? How do you prove substantial cost savings?
I don't know that I'm the best person to answer that. I don't know if Bob's allowed to weigh in.
And I don't necessarily need the answer today, but I think it's worth, when you see words like that, someone is going to ask us, well, how do you prove that there's no favoritism? What is the definition of favoritism and what's the definition of substantial? So if someone could just shoot me a note, I'd be fine.
Sure, we can follow up with that.
Great. Mr. Eden?
No questions or comments?
Chair would entertain a motion.
I entertain a substantial motion for approval.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it. Motion carries. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you. Yep, thanks a lot. There you go.
We are adjourned.
Great, thank you. No, it's done.